What is up, Ridge Runner Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Ridge Runners Live. If you were expecting me to do the intro that Wesley does, you are wrong. I will not be doing that this evening. Tonight we have an awesome episode. We have Mike Whisman from Next Opportunity Events. In 2014, his wife Brandy and him decided to make this race company because of the fact that there was no races in Kentucky. So they started directing races, and they put on some of the most premier races in the Midwest. Maybe you heard of them: the Big Turtle 50 miler, the Warhammer 100. Bluegrass Reaper, Breaks Ultra, and the Cave Run Lake Marathon, as well as the Rough Trail 50K. So we are in for a great treat tonight. Michael, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. I appreciate you guys chatting with me. It's fun. Great way to kick off the year.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, per usual, we'll start with our normal beverage drinking of choice this evening. I am drinking a gin and tonic because I'm all out of beer. So that's what I had in the cabinet. What are you drinking, Mike?
I am, don't pick on me, I'm going on non-alcoholic this evening with an Ale 8 straight from Kentucky, which is a fine ginger ale. Perfect trail running drink. But I'm at the age now where I can't drink too late at night or I don't get up in the morning. So
How about you, Cam? What are you drinking with us this evening?
All right. Well, I have a pretty classic thing going with an IPA as per usual on our show. This is a Land Grant Brewing Oh Sure IPA.
For sure.
Nice. So if we want to get started right now, and we can explain to everyone who's listening, what maybe give us a background or a history briefly of Next Opportunity and how kind of that started.
Yeah, well, I'll skip all. I'll just hit the interesting parts, I guess. So we started in 2015. So we do, as you said in the intro, we've done everywhere from 2 events a year up to 8 events a year in Eastern Kentucky, mainly in Southwest Virginia. We started in 2015 because I started to get into trail running. I did an ultra or 2 down in Georgia, and I realized as I got into the trail running community that, everybody else in the state was doing what I was doing, which was leaving Kentucky to do their trail running. So they were all going to Ohio or Virginia or Georgia or Tennessee or wherever, everywhere but Kentucky to do their trail racing because there weren't any. Now there have been a few around, like in 2013 or 2014, there was a trail half marathon that sprung up. And there's always been this race called Land Between the Lakes out west in Western Kentucky. So it's not like there weren't any, but there were maybe just those 2. So we really, I've got a background in project management as my boring career and had done event planning in the past. And so we just decided that after some failed attempts to get a group together to form some sort of grassroots race planning organization, after those attempts failed, we were just like, let's just make a race, just the 2 of us. So me and Brandy, my wife, we made a couple races back in 2015, did those again in 2016, and we expanded, and then we shrunk back down again, and this year we've added a couple more. So it's been truly a fake it till you make it kind of thing. I don't know that we made it yet because we're still very much faking it. But we're just kind of seeing what works, and some races haven't survived. And as you mentioned, like this year, we've got 2 brand new ones. So yeah, that's the real quick and dirty of just how we got started. We got started because, there were a lot of trail runners here, and they were all leaving the state to go do their trail running. And obviously everybody else in the country was not coming to Kentucky. So a big thing for us has always been tourism, because we do these races in these rural communities in Southwest Virginia and Eastern Kentucky, and having a couple hundred trail runners come in for the weekend and get hotels and buy gas and go to restaurants and stuff, that's good for that community. So it was important for us to get people from around the country to come to Kentucky too, just to kind of boost those local economies, even for just a weekend on a small scale. So so that's kind of what we were all about in the beginning, and how we got started was just because there wasn't any trail running, and I felt like we had the skill set to make it happen. And so we spent $250 of our own money to like make an LLC and run some Facebook ads, and it took off from there. Yeah.
Things been working out pretty well since then. What was your guys' first race? What was the first one you put on?
So the first one that we ever announced was the Rough Trail 50K, and that's in Red River Gorge in Eastern Kentucky. A really popular spot for rock climbing, hiking, paddle sports, you name it. And so that was the first one that we like launched and got out there. And once we started marketing that race, had a friend from here in Lexington, where I live, from the local running shop. He contacted me, was like, "Yo, I went to a wedding at this tree farm a few years ago. Here's their number. You might want to check them out." So I called this Christmas tree farm, and that turned into a race that we did for 4 years called the Hot 100. It was this crazy 10K loop where there was a 100K relay. So basically, like, people would do 10K at a time as relay teams and just hang out and drink beer and run all day. And yeah, so we did that one for 4 or 5 years. And yeah, it's one of those that we axed. We no longer do that one for a couple of different reasons, which we can get into if you want. But that was actually the Hot 100 was the first one we actually did back in 2015. That one was in August, even though we launched the other one first, marketing wise. The Hot 100 was the first race we ever did. And if you look at, I might have some photos on our website from it. If not, I should put some up, because it was funny. I had 2 tiny little flags, like 1 pop-up tent, I think like 2 folding tables. It was really just like, let's show up and see if anybody comes to run. And we had nothing. No, I think I bought a Bluetooth speaker at Costco. Like, that was our big event operation at the time.
Love it. Love those little speakers when you get to a place and you're like, what in the?
Yeah.
But eventually grow from there, obviously.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. And I love how there's this constant trend with, groups of people who start like these race companies in these areas. It's always like there's a lack of local running, and there's always this drive for the community build, like you were talking about, like bringing people down to that area. And there's, obviously Kentucky's known for bourbon, so I'm sure that plays into a lot of it for people coming to visit. Like, they can go like, oh, we're gonna do some bourbon stuff and go for a run. I mean, that's a win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you've got good trails down there. I mean, there's, Appalachia cuts through that area too, so there's some pretty rugged stuff that you can get out there if you wanted. So I always love those trends. But
yeah, it was important. I think one thing that was important for us too, as we started to grow, and we realized, after that first year or two, and we realized like that we were making an impact. These local communities they were happy to see the races go on, even though, the first time you go into a place and you're like, I'm going to put on you go and sit down in this tourism meeting with these, these small community members, and you're like, I want to bring in 200 people and they're going to run 50 miles. And it's just a completely foreign idea, and they don't get it. But after they see it happen, and they're like, and they hear all the cabin owners are like, Jesus, we were booked that weekend, it turns out, to have a really big impact. And, one thing that we're working toward now is, I want to show people that Kentucky isn't just horses and bourbon. That's played out, and that's boring to me, honestly. So yeah, do that while you're here, but like, come for the running, come for the outdoor adventure.
mm-hmm.
It's way more than just horse races and rich people drinking bourbon.
Mm-hmm. And so, Michael, you have already touched on this a little bit, but how do you get people from these rural communities And being from like a very rural part of Ohio myself, I kind of understand this, who see all these outsiders. A lot of people from cities come in for just a weekend and maybe really distrustful of it. How do you get them to sort of trust you right away to like let you put on this race? Or is it just sort of you have to just wait and see, and then you'll see how much like economic impact this has right away, like as soon as the race is happening?
That's part of it. That's part of it for sure. It's just, you got to make it happen that first time and then it be successful. I mean, if you do it and you lay an egg, then it doesn't matter how much they trusted you before, So that's certainly part of just doing the race and putting on a good event and a profitable event, both, not just for me, but for the community.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. But it's also, it's a little bit of everything. I mean, I grew up in West Virginia, so part of it's, just upping my Southern accent a little bit when I go talk to people. But no, seriously, it's just a lot of driving to these communities and meeting with people, rather than sending an email. Because you gotta when you're planning an event like this, you have to deal with a whole lot of different people. Everybody from, of course, like if you're in the national forest, which a lot of my races are, you're dealing with the people at the Forest Service, which are federal employees, but you're also going down and you're meeting with tourism boards and local EMS people who often in those communities, that's not their full-time job. They're like an EMT on the side where, a lot of it is just taking the time to, take a day off and drive down and meet with people face to face. So they're not just getting an email from somebody in the city, because I live in Lexington. So if all they do is just get an email or phone call from me and never I'm just some guy from Lexington. But if I go down there and I meet with people and I can actually sit down in a room with people, then they get to know me and they can ask me questions and tell me what their concerns are. And I can kind of explain it, like, why are people running 50 miles, or like, what is 100K? How far is that? It's just too hard to introduce in an email or even a phone call half the time. So it's just a lot of face-to-face really is what it comes down to. I think, once people get to know you, just like any part of life, really, like once people get to know you, they'll start to trust you, so yeah, it's a lot of face-to-face stuff, and then just like you said, getting that first one done and it not sucking.
Yeah, and once you get
that totally makes sense.
Go ahead.
I was just probably the same thing you were saying, John. That makes a lot of sense, that you would have to do that. But as a follow-up question, you mentioned, when you started this company, there were really no races in Kentucky, right? But you knew that there was a community, and they were going to Ohio, they were going to Virginia, they were going to Georgia. How were you able to figure out that there was demand for a race that was local, and where was that demand specifically at?
It was in Red River Gorge, which it's about 45 minutes from where I live in Lexington. So all the runners, there's a huge running community here in this city, road runners and trail runners, because there's a great city just south of us called College. Lived there for a long time. They've got a great little trail system down there. It's a nice little trail town. And then about 45 minutes southeast of us here is Red River Gorge, which is the famous outdoor adventure spot. And all around the area in Eastern Kentucky, just talk about like, man, it would be cool if somebody would, but like nobody will. So we just decided to do it. So, and then when we did it, we saw, I think we had 120 people come that first year. And then we've sold it out every year since, that the Rough Trail 50K that we do in Red River Gorge. So that was the initial demand, was just, let's do an ultra in Red River Gorge, our sort of home trails. And let's see if it happens. Wasn't looking to start a business or anything necessarily. But then when we saw, holy shit, like 120 people showed up for our little thing with our Bluetooth speaker and one little flag. I bought it the sign shop down the road. And that kind of reaffirmed like, oh, people do like this, and people will come to Kentucky to do this. If the race is right, there's a lot of factors, but that just showed us that there was a demand out there, if we made the right kind of event.
Yeah, of course. And so With that said, I'm thinking now, right? So I'm sure you were hearing a lot of these people say, "Oh, it'd be great to have an ultra at the Red," right? But what kind of an ultra were they looking to get? I know I'm always in like Michael Owen's ear telling him to start this one particular race that I think I'm one of about a dozen people who wants to run, you know? So was it a lot of demand for a specific race, or was it really just open-ended and you had to kind of come up with a course and decide what distance you wanted to do?
It was the latter. Like I didn't really seek any specific input. It was a lot of these just like passive comments. You know, you'd be out on a run with somebody on a Saturday morning, and while you're huffing up this climb, somebody's like, "Man, it'd be cool if somebody would do an ultra out here." But I never really pressed like, "Do you mean 50K or 50 miler?" And really, the Red River Gorge, for as popular as it is, it doesn't. There's not really a way to do anything bigger than a 50K, really. Like once I started looking at maps, it was hard to get that much, and that's, the Rough Trail 50K has several little out and back sections where you have to do the same little section twice. So no, there was nothing. It was just kind of, I got a map and looked at it and tried to figure out where we could park people, and then from there, where could you run to get enough miles for any kind of race. I think I started out with it being a marathon initially, and then just managed to add in a few more miles to make it an official 50K. So no, for that one in particular, there wasn't any specific demand, I guess, or or anything. I didn't even know too many trail runners at the time, so I couldn't even ask people. Most of my trail running friends I've met because they ran my races, and I met them at the races. When I first started, I didn't know too many trail runners, so I remember I would go into a conference room at work because I was working for the local Kentucky community college system, and I would leave my cubicle and go into the conference room during my lunch break and spread out this big ass map of Red River Gorge. And up on the whiteboard, I'd be like, okay, this trail is 4 miles, and then this one is 3, and I would be adding it up. Just okay, so I'm up to 18 miles. Okay, fuck, how do I get like more? So that's all that first race was just me and a map, and just me and Brandy just going out and running it a lot.
Now, those challenges that you had with trying to find the distance, is that just because of that area, is there not enough trail, or is it just hard to find ways to connect different trails, like in a safe manner or anything like that?
I think it was a matter of just trying to connect them all.
Mhm.
You know, it's easy to look at a section of trail and be like, yeah, we could do that, sure. But then when you actually start thinking about a race and you're like, oh, that's 15 miles of trails with no roads anywhere. Like you can't get an aid station anywhere near in there.
Mhm.
So that's when you have to start eliminating pieces, because you got to start thinking about, where can I put an aid station. So yeah, and plus the Red River Gorge just doesn't have, like, I think the longest trail there continuously from point to point is like 8 miles before you have to. It's a network of all these short little trails that go all over the place, through that area. And of course, you have the Sheltowee Trace, which is the Sheltowee Trace National Recreation Trail, which is almost 350 miles. Goes from Moorhead, Kentucky, all the way down into Tennessee. That goes through Red River Gorge. But again, I think it was the challenge, just a matter of seeing all these little sections, and then how do you connect them all for like a route
Mhm.
that, that's good, where there's not you don't have too many aid stations, but you don't have too much distance between aid stations. It's all a maddening mess trying to create a race route, man.
Yeah, definitely understand that, having just played around with the Strava route creator a few times, being like, how would this actually even work, But with that said, we do have our first question from the live chat tonight. It's from Wesley Harton, whom you all know and love. He asks, have you felt support from trail runners in other communities? How have runners from Ohio and surrounding areas responded to your races?
Ohio kicks ass. Indiana kicks ass. Not that other states don't kick ass, but I'm just saying we get out. Other than Kentucky, Ohio and Indiana are number one, number two as far as participants from those states. I think that's probably just a matter of how easy it is to get from there to here. There's not an interstate that really goes from Virginia into Kentucky, or, so I have, a big time. I've had a lot of participants have come from this region of the country, Central Appalachia and the Southeast. We'll get into whether Kentucky is Southeast or Midwest or whatever the hell it is. I have no idea. um, but yeah, totally. And I don't think, even if there's low attendance from these other states, I don't see that as a lack of support. Like Tennessee, for instance, I don't get a lot of runners from Tennessee, even though I'm only 2 hours from the Tennessee border. But I think that's more a factor of just, if I'm living in Knoxville, I have a lot of options. As far as like, I can be over in North Carolina really quickly, or South Carolina, or Georgia, or Kentucky, or, so I don't think that's like Tennessee doesn't like us. I just think, people in Tennessee have a lot of options. So, but yeah, I totally feel like we've had a ton of support. I have a lot of great friends up in Indiana who, like, I never would have gone to Indiana, or certainly never would have met anybody from Indiana had they not come down for my races. But the Indiana Trail Runners group in Central Indiana, they're awesome. I have a lot of great friends there. I've made a lot of great friends in West Virginia through this venture. So yeah, totally. I think there's a great little community, particularly around this even smaller sub-region, if you will, of Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and East Tennessee, and I get a lot of participants from Georgia also.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. I do want to point out that you did say Ohio kicks ass, and in response to that, Wesley said, "Put that on a T-shirt in the chat." Mentally, I made a note. I was like, "We should clip that for social."
Yes, we can take that out and post.
Yeah,
and maybe. But no, I do get a lot of people from Ohio attending our races. Yes.
Yeah. And so with that said, another Ohio guy, former guest on the show, Samuel Hartman, he ran at Breaks earlier this year. He is asking in the chat, could Mike envision a multi-day stage race from Moorhead to Big South Fork on the Sheltowee Trace Trail?
I can envision it, Sam. I can envision it. I don't know if I would ever want to do it. But it's possible, but the Sheltowee Trace is a tough trail to do a race on. We did as Sam well knows, he ran the Warhammer 100 back in 2019. And that's the 100 miler that we do, which we're doing again this year on a completely different route. So we kept the race name and the logo, but we moved it to a different part of Kentucky entirely, mainly because that section that Sam and others ran in 2018, 2019 is it's tough to put on a race because there's a lot of road, and that's fine. That's whatever, in my opinion. I don't throw a hissy fit over road running. But those roads do go past like some residences, and you encounter dogs that are not that friendly, and you're running through different communities, man, in Eastern Kentucky. It's like we were talking about at the beginning. You got to get buy-in from these people, because you're gonna ask them to volunteer and come out to the aid station, especially these super long distance races. You can't just like show up into one of these tiny little towns and be like, I need 20 people who are willing to volunteer from 6 p.m. until noon the next day. Okay, like they're like, fuck off, get out of here. So that's and that race, when we did it on that route in 2018, 2019, we went through 9 different counties. So that was like 9 different little sub communities, the little subcultures that I had to that we had to go into and talk to and get them to buy into, and some of them did, some of them didn't. Man, some big ass like 300-mile race would be a beast. I would never do it, Sam. I would never do it. One, because I've sworn off point-to-point races, sworn them off. And I'm not at a point in my life where I could dedicate that much time to a multi-day race. I would be happy to volunteer for someone else's race if they want to try that. But like I'm just I've got another job or two plus 3 kids. I couldn't do like a 5-day stage race. Not gonna happen from me.
All right. And so with that said, a few thoughts. First, I hope Michael Owen's listening for the free idea. He may also have some kids and may not want to do a point-to-point stage race, but it'd be your first race outside of Ohio. So, just saying. But also Samuel, who I know definitely has interest in running the full thing, the full Sheltowee Trace Trail, also said, are you going to set the new FKT on that route this year?
Me?
Yes.
I'll be honest. I want to. I want to attempt it. I would love to attempt it northbound from the southern terminus and finish up in Moorhead. I would love to, and I've actually I put it on my calendar, and we'll just see how the summer goes. I signed up for 2 100-milers this year. I've never done a 100-miler, so I signed up for 2 of them. And I would love to try. And my plan right now is to try. I don't even know what the current mileage for the trail is, honestly, because I haven't done a ton of research yet. So it's been 323 for a while, and they've expanded it a little bit, and it's gonna be 350. It's not quite 350 yet, so I don't know, but I would love to give it a shot. And I think I've got some free time in late April or late September, I mean. So I might give it a run if all goes well and I do this 100-miler in May, and then the summer goes well, I'll give it a shot. We'll see.
Well, we'll be excited to watch that and follow that if that happens in that time. We've got another question from Caleb Bowen in the chat. It says, any advice on someone running Big Turtle for the first time? And we want to preface, the last time Caleb Bowen asked this question in the chat, he ended up winning the race.
Okay, I see where he's going for the Big Turtle. I mean, just it's I guess my one piece of advice I always give everybody for the Big Turtle is not really, it's just a tip more than like training advice or anything, but it's a really hard race to train for. It's not the hardest race you're ever going to run in terms of the terrain. It doesn't have a shitload of elevation or anything, but it gets really fucking hot in late April in Kentucky. The problem is up until mid-April, it's really fucking cold. So like it's freezing up until the first week or 2 of April. And then it just gets 80 degrees all of a sudden. So you have no way to actually acclimate. And we have so many people at the Big Turtle 50-miler who drop out just because they get dehydrated because they've been training all winter for this race. They're in great shape. But it just, you show up on race morning and we had it a couple years ago. It was like 36 when it started and it got up into the high 70s that afternoon. It's just, it's so weird in Kentucky in April and May. Like summer starts in June, but like who knows what April is going to be like. So I think it's just, if nothing else, if you're signed up for the Big Turtle this year or you're thinking about it in the future, it's always the last-ish weekend of April in Eastern Kentucky. It's always going to be a hot afternoon, I think, always. Even the times we've had it rain, it's still just like a hot, steamy rain, but you can't get it really too many good hot training days in leading up to it. So if you have access to a treadmill, bundle up and run on a treadmill inside just to make yourself sweat and be really uncomfortable. Just, if nothing else, just mentally go into it understanding that it's going to be really hot and don't be taken by surprise by that. I guess that's the biggest thing that I see at that particular race.
Good advice here. We'll see if Caleb wins it. He's a pretty fast kid. The chat is lighting up with people who are talking about trying to convince other people in the chat to race your races. So it's pretty good right now. They're talking about the brakes, and they said highly recommended to run brakes. So it's good to hear. This coming year, you've got some new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to talk about those a little bit and dive into those and what they're about?
Yeah, I thought, it's what better time to expand the business than during a pandemic where you're not allowed to have events. I thought that was just a good move for our business. So yeah, we got 2 new events, one in August, one in October. The Bluegrass Reaper Challenge in August and the Cave Run Lake Marathon in October. Cave Run Lake Marathon, just straight up trail marathon, nothing weird about it, just a nice, pretty marathon by a lake. We're gonna start and finish right on the beach by the big ass lake at Cave Run, and yeah, trail marathon in the fall. It's gonna be really pretty. The other one, the Bluegrass Reaper Challenge, is actually an idea that I got from a buddy of mine who does his name's Matt Hammersmith, who does Upstate Ultra, is his organization down in South Carolina. And he does a race called the Carolina Reaper Challenge, and it's a 2.6 mile loop on a paved path. I think he's moved it to a trail facility now, and so we've sort of mimicked that, because I did his race a couple years ago and came home, had the time of my life at his race down in South Carolina. So I kind of called him up afterwards, was like, dude, I want to do this in Kentucky. Are you cool with it? I'm not trying to steal your idea or anything, but like, this is a kick-ass race. So, and of course he's awesome. And so I'm kind of doing a version of his race here, and we're sort of co-promoting. He's going to come up and help me time it. I'm going to come down for his race and at least run it, if nothing else. So we got a great relationship there between South Carolina and Kentucky going on with the two of us. But the race is 2.6 mile loop on a paved path in Berea, Kentucky. You start the lap every 40 minutes. So in this sort of vein of a backyard ultra, when you get done, the faster you run, the more time you have to rest. So if you run the race if you run the lap in 39 minutes, you got 1 minute to rest. So everybody starts the lap every 40 minutes. Why this is not a backyard ultra is there's a set distance. So you can either sign up for a 50K, a marathon, a half marathon, a 10K. So everybody's done at the same time. It's not one of these like last person standing kind of thing. And it starts at 11 a.m. and goes till 7 p.m. through the hottest part of the August day in Kentucky. So the whole point of it is to be hot and miserable, but it's a great, like I said, Berea, Kentucky is where I went to college. I got married there. My kids were born there. It's a great city, great little trail town. We're doing it in their city park, which has some great walking paths, paved paths. But yeah, that's going on in the first weekend of August. So that's our new one. So that one's just sort of like kind of closing out the summer and just kind of a big party. And I'm really excited for that one. Real excited to do a race in Berea, where I spent so much of my adult life. So that's cool. What?
Yeah, leaving myself on mute to speak. This is almost like this is my first show. But yeah, so there's a couple more questions from the chat. The first one I want to get to, because a lot of people are in the chat talking about Breaks Ultra right now. Samuel Hartman wants to know, hey, Mike, what's that last climb like during the Breaks race?
It's all right. I mean, it's okay. So that is my favorite race, and by far. If races are children and you're not supposed to pick your favorite, but I've got a favorite, and it's that one. I love directing that race. It's my favorite one. It's one, everybody always gives me shit saying that like I design races just to be a dick and like just to make it as hard as I can, which is not true. I do want to challenge people, but you know, I want to make things that are hard and challenging, but I don't want to just make people miserable. But the Breaks is one where I did kind of go for making people miserable. So I make them cross a river twice on foot, so they're soaking wet, and then yeah, and the final climb. So do either of you know, like, are you familiar with Breaks Interstate Park or that part of the country or anything?
I'm roughly familiar. Samuel Hartman is actually a coworker of mine.
Really?
So I have heard some things about the Breaks course.
Okay. All right. Cool. Sam rules, man. So yeah, the Breaks Interstate Park is an interstate park, one of only two in the country, which means it's basically a state park that's in both Virginia and Kentucky. So we do the race there, and right along the border is Pine Mountain, this big ass mountain in Southwest Virginia, Southeast Kentucky. Top of that, the ridge line of that mountain kind of forms the border between the two states. And the breaks got the name because the river there made this deep canyon, which is, depending on how you measure canyons, the deepest gorge this side of the Mississippi. So they lay claim to that, at least. And so that race, basically, we have them go down into the gorge, climb up out of it. And then once they climb up out of the gorge, they climb up on top of the mountain, come back off the mountain. I make them go back up the mountain. And then as Sam was alluding to, the final climb so it's a 45-mile race. It's probably about mile 43 when you have to climb out of the canyon. And the trail, which I didn't build the trail. I just told people to follow the trail that is clearly marked by the park. It has a name and everything. But this thing just it really does. It's an insane grade, and there's photos on the website. We can maybe even post them somewhere after this, of when I went down and sort of took the video of myself going up it. And you literally have to put your hands, like, climb up it like a ladder. It's so steep. It's an 800 or 900 foot climb, which doesn't sound that incredible, but once you've already climbed about 11,000 feet that day, and you're 43 miles in, and some people are doing it in the dark. It's just brutal. It's terrible. It's a terrible climb. I hate it, but I love it. And yeah, that is my favorite race, though, because it is, it's an extreme challenge. I say that when I'm promoting the race, like, this is not the one to do for your first ultra. But man, the look on people's faces when they finally finish that one is unlike anything. Like, a lot of people will finish a 50K, even in Red River Gorge, which is a tough race at the Rough Trail 50K. They'll finish that one, but they'll still be high-fiving and stuff. People finish the breaks and they just go and they sit down, and they're just like, they're not even tired. They're just like, they have no soul left in them. And they'll just go and sit on a picnic table, and I go over and I'll be like, "Good job, man, you all right?" And they'll just sort of go like, yeah. Like, and then they disappear. They go back to their hotel room and never speak to me again. So, it's fantastic.
Wesley wants to know, since Breaks registration opened last Friday, are there still spots available? Is it sold out yet?
No, not yet. No. It's not quite half full. So
Wesley, you better sign up.
Yeah. Plenty to go.
And then Eric Anderson has a question. It says, regarding COVID, North Carolina, everything's very much up in the air. Kind of how are you feeling going into this year, and what are your kind of plans for mitigating that as you move forward?
I'm hopeful. I'm still, like, realistically worried about the Big Turtle race in April.
Mm-hmm.
Because, kind of like I alluded to before, these communities, I do care about these communities. I go in, and a lot of these communities with their tourism boards, they've given us money through sponsorships and helped us, like, get these things off the ground. So I care about these communities. I don't want to bring in 200, 300, 400 people if they don't want me to. So that one's in late April. So I believe we'll be able to do the race. I've already sort of let all the runners know that it's going to be highly restricted. I kind of canceled all the other peripheral activities, if you will, like the Friday night dinner, Friday night announcements meeting. We're not doing any of that. And just kind of, it's going to be like the breaks was this past year. Show up that morning, I'll give you your bib, let's run, cross the finish line, go home. No post-race celebration, unfortunately. So, and we've made some other adjustments too. We've staggered the start times, and I think we'll be able to have it. But I'm not naive enough to think that we're out of the woods with it yet. Excuse me. Everything else, most of our races, my races are in June, August, September, October, December. So they're later in the year. I'm really not that worried about those. It's probably the ones here within the next 6 months that I'm still like, okay, I'm confident. I'm planning ahead. I'm trying to mitigate everything I can. I don't think we'll have to cancel, but as you know, like this shit turns on a dime,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if we were to have a race today, there's some races that were in March that have already canceled. Like a Land Between the Lakes, which I mentioned earlier, out in West Kentucky. They're in late March. They announced the other day that they're canceling. So excuse me. So, I still feel good about April still, because like that's a much bigger race than the Big Turtle. I've limited the Big Turtle to 350 people, staggering everybody out. So I think we'll still be able to have it. But I think we'll still be wearing masks well into the fall, probably, at most of these things. At least the volunteers and staff will. It'll probably be, maybe the Rough Trail 50K in December, we might be, maskless and high-fiving and hugging. But I think we'll still be talking COVID like well into the fall, I think. As far as races being canceled, I'm only worried about like kind of those between now and June. And I'm not that worried about cancellations. I'm more worried about communities asking us to, like cut down the number of runners, or like move it to a different location, not do anything indoor, just trying, asking us to make programmatic changes that can sort of lessen the impact. So I still think we'll be able to have them. I actually have, hopefully I'm having a conversation with like the judge executive and the health department in Moorhead this coming week. So I'm talking to them all the time. So it's not like, when something changes, I'll know and the runners will know right away. Try not to have another Rough Trail episode where I have to cancel a week out. That sucked.
Yeah, I imagine that would be tough.
Yeah.
Decision too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we may be through the fall wearing masks, but I am very excited for that vision of eventually just partying at a race, like the before and the after, and the just like you said, that like the hug and the high five and all of the people being all friendly. So other people aren't friendly now. It's that extra piece. So
yeah, well, I mean, you kind of get to know people on the trail, but I mean, especially me as a Sam, who was commenting earlier, has become a good friend of mine, and that's because he's come down to Kentucky to do a few of my races, but he hangs out afterwards. I remember meeting him at the Rough Trail 50K a few years ago after he ran, and he was just down sitting by the fire, and I walked down to the fire to warm my hands up because it's cold, and started chatting. So that's where all these relationships and friendships come in. It's the Friday night, and it's that race afternoon after people finish and they hang around. So that's what's kind of a bummer for me right now, is because that's where I meet all of these runners, is after they're done, and then we can talk about it. So yeah, I'm anxious for that too, because it's kind of lonely for me. I feel really shitty too at these races. Like, all right, good job, now leave, please leave, because so. But that's the world we live in right now, and it's gonna be like that. It's gonna be like that for a while, and I think it's gonna change a lot just permanently in how we do races too. Honestly, COVID, but yeah, I mean, we can get into that if you want, but that's a bigger conversation.
Yeah, I think gone are the days of a man popping out of the woods and running up to an aid station and me not asking questions before he dips his hand into a communal bowl of food.
How reckless were we?
Probably for the best, to be fair.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. We would just, I mean, I did it. I organized these races, and I would tell volunteers, oh, no, don't worry about it. Just put the M&Ms in a bowl and set them on a table, and it's fine. No problem. And then just people coming out like, this guy just crapped, this person just threw up. this person just fell and has blood all over their hands, but they're all grabbing, and we were so reckless. Like we didn't care. And you're right, Cam. I mean, those days are over. Like you're never going to see, at least in my races, another just like open vat of PB&Js and just telling people help yourselves. That's gone, man.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that changing and staying changed. That's a great comment. We need to like make a meme out of that one or something. But
But yeah, we got another chat question from Michael Gamp. We touched on this a little bit already, but he wants to know how you've gotten the communities down there to be so welcoming to the trail runners. He says that they are just so friendly and helpful.
I think like anything, if you think about where you guys grew up, I grew up in West Virginia, and most of my family's from West Virginia. I spent the last 20 years in Kentucky. And like anything where you're from, your own little culture that you grew up in, your community, you want to share that with people. When you meet somebody who's not from where you're from, you want to be like, oh, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about our local beer, or this local thing that we make, or this thing I did when I was growing up. People just want to share their culture with you, I think. So I think it's partly a two-way street, because trail runners on the whole, I think, and runners and maybe just people are just, nice. And particularly the trail running community. So I think it's both. You have these kind and energetic people who chose to come here. They chose to buy a plane ticket or whatever to come to this community. And a lot of these people in the community, they're local business owners. They own the gas station, they own the Airbnb or the cabin that you rented. They're just grateful because, as a small business owner, I know, like, I am thankful for every, like, oh, you spent $90 to do this race. I know what $90 is for me. That's a chunk of change. So I think I don't think it's nothing I've done. I don't no. All I think that Brandy and I have done is just kind of opened these people's eyes to this sport, but we didn't do anything to make them more welcoming or nice. That they just are. And I think they're happy to see people visit their community who do it in a responsible way. I think that's one thing that the trail running community always does, is that when we come into a town for a race, we don't want to just fuck the place up. None of us try to like go in and litter and act crazy. We're there to run. We're there to have a good time. And so I think the people who live and work in those communities, they see that, and they see that we're being respectful. So yeah, I don't think we did anything. We just kind of brought the race there, and people are just who they are.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a really great point, and to kind of surmise that, right? Like, people want to share things, right? Like, I'm a 9-2 tour. And if you know what that means, you know exactly what that means. But I assume nobody here does, because it's very specific to the part of Ohio that I'm from.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, with that said, Mike Anderson wants to know if the Redbird Crest 100K is gone forever.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's one of our races. Like I said, we were faking it till you make it. And a lot of these races we tried to do, and they had significant challenges for one reason or another, and we just decided not to do them. Some of those challenges were like logistics and just made it too difficult to put on, even though the trails may have been great and the route may have been great, and just the scenery may have been fantastic. I mean, I'll just be totally honest with you. The Redbird Crest, where we staged the race, was this trailhead where there was this parking lot. And it seems like you look at that and you pull up and you're like, this would be a great place. There's plenty of parking right here on the trail. Great. But there was no electricity, there was no running water, and there was no shelter. So we had to like pack all that in there. I had to rent generators and haul in generators and go into the city to fill up all the water jugs and haul all those back. And if we ran out of water, we had to run into the city to get more water. It was just kind of a nightmare in terms of that. So that's why, like, we've done a few races that we're probably not going to do again, even though the race itself was fantastic. I think it just made it not feasible for us to do it, from our standpoint as race directors. It was like, it's almost like one of those where the juice isn't worth the squeeze kind of thing. We're working so hard just to get water and electricity there, and as hard as we worked to promote it, I think the most we had at that race was 50 people. So it's not like it was making headlines or anything. So yeah, unfortunately, I think that one and a couple of the other ones that we've done in the past are archived.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a chance to take a breath real quick, because we've been talking a lot tonight about stuff, and I want to remind everyone that we're just getting started this year. Ridge Runners has a lot of fun content coming at you. We've got a film coming out in the next month. We also have a lot of Ridge Runners lives, boss talks, and everything else coming at you. So if we've earned a subscription, please click that subscription box below. Give us a follow. We greatly appreciate it, and it helps us out a lot. And then I will hand it back over to Cam to roll into our quick questions for the end of the evening.
Yeah. All right. And we want to thank you guys for sticking with us this late. I am really stoked to hear these answers from Michael, because we've talked a lot about his races, but not a ton about like his own running. So I think this is going to help us to get to know him a little bit better. And so we're going to start this with the one question that I love, and that I cannot let people get out without asking. But if ultra running had walk-up songs like baseball, Michael, what would yours be?
Ooh, can I pick like the Darth Vader theme song? That would kick ass.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
John's ruling for that one.
Or maybe that operatic song in episode 1, Star Wars episode 1, when Darth Maul.
Oh, Duel of Fates.
His dual lightsaber. Yes.
Yeah, I know that song.
That's
a good
choir.
one.
Oh,
yeah.
That one.
Okay, that one's on
Nerd
Spotify,
alert.
so that's gonna be on it. So we have the best Spotify playlist. So if you listen to it, it's just the genre changes is like startling when you're running. But this is gonna add to it.
If that played when I to the race, I would certainly win for sure.
All right. Well, hey, all the other race directors who are listening to this with your little Costco Bluetooth speaker, you now know what not to play. But yeah, we've talked about aid stations a bit tonight, and all the questionable things we've done before reaching into communal bowls at them. But Michael, what's one thing you can't leave an aid station without?
Oh, if they have watermelon, I'm diving in. I don't care how hot or cold it is outside. If there's watermelon there, I'm all up in some watermelon. Other than that, I don't like go crazy at aid stations. I normally pack like what I want, but I will not pass up some watermelon. Never. Mm-hmm.
All right. And do you have any pre-race rituals?
No, not really. Honestly, I do make sure just like every morning I drink some coffee, but no, not really. I don't have a special pair of socks or anything like that I always wear. Just try to treat it like a normal day.
Okay. And any big post-race indulgences that you always do?
I try. I really try. But no, like after a long race, I can't eat. Like my mouth feels all weird for like 24 hours. So like I always try to go out to eat and eat something crazy, but I can't. So normally I just kind of want to go to sleep. So I'm so bored.
Yeah. All right. Just a couple more. We are going to interject one from the chat. This is Samuel Hartman again, but he asks, does Mike have any secret races planned for 2022? And I can't let that one go.
I'm working on a couple. Yes. But that's all. They're secret, man. I can't give you any more than that. Yeah, I have two that I have like sent emails about, hey, can I get a permit if I wanted to do something like this? So yeah. Potentially.
All right, that's good to know. Everybody, please keep an eye out for any future emails from Michael.
Yeah.
And so this will be our last question. If you could run with one person in the history of the world, even if they aren't a runner, let's just assume they'll keep up with you or keep your pace to have a good conversation on a long run with you, who would it be and where would you run?
Ooh, can I get serious?
Yeah,
You can
Does it
absolutely
have
get
to be?
serious.
Okay. Um, ah, I'd hate to like bring the temperature down too much, but I would say my dad. I would run with my father. My dad died in a plane crash when I was 7. So never really got to have a conversation with him as an adult or anything. And I know he was really athletic and like did some local, 5Ks or whatever before I was born. So like that would be it, just to like go on a run, probably somewhere in the hills of southern West Virginia where he grew up. Uh, yeah, there's a great 40 miler in West Virginia that I like to do every summer, and somewhere around there, those mountains are just amazing. So yeah, if I could just pick somebody that if I could have one conversation with, that would be it. Not to get too cheesy or too serious here, but that would be it. Yeah.
Michael, every time we ask this question, we get better and better answers. And there are always heartwarming like that one was, so definitely don't apologize for that. That's a great answer. We need to clip all of these and make a compilation of people saying just like the sweetest things. It really kicked off. I think the first time we asked it, a woman said, well, I just want to run with my husband.
Ah,
And ever since they've all been really great. I keep expecting, like politicians or famous like musicians, and everybody's got such great answers. So thank you so much for that, Michael. And thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any sponsors, anyone you'd like to thank, anything you want to plug before we close the show out?
Um, uh, I guess like I should thank Sword Performance, which is our hydration drink, founded here in Lexington, Kentucky. You can look them up at like drinksword.com or swordperformance.com. That's SWORD, Sword Performance. They've been like our hydration drink since day one when I first started doing races. They've always donated product to us on the house and kind of always had my back. And then I guess I as I mentioned in a video that I sent out to our mailing list a few days ago, I'm just incredibly grateful to everybody who's stuck with us this past year. It's been a really rough year. When you're in a business and the government says you can't do your business, it's been a tough year. And so I'm just I guess I need to give a shout out just to you and to you guys and everybody watching and listening, and everybody not watching and listening who's just not unsubscribed from our emails and written us off. I'm very grateful just to still be here, to still be talking about this kind of stuff, and I'm really hopeful for 2021. So yeah, I'm just grateful to everybody, especially all those friends that we've met the last 5 years who are still going to be there for us.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think closing out by echoing Matthew Hammersmith's comment here is going to be a good note. He says, congrats, Mike. Glad to see your bus taking off, and we appreciate all of the support of Upstate Ultras down here. Cannot wait till Bluegrass. Everybody who joined us tonight, thank you so much for joining. Once again, thank you, Michael, so much for coming on the show. This was a really great episode. We'll have one probably next week. Also some Road to 100 episodes with JD3. I know he's got those in the works. And we are steadily working on our Rim to River 100 film. I cannot wait to share that with you guys. And I cannot wait to run this race this year. Just being there was so great. But anyways, we hope to see y'all soon. Okay?
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.